Thanks for joining me here at the Real ResQ podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. This episode of the Real ResQ podcast is going to be brought to us by Bell, above and beyond flight. From breaking the sound barrier to developing the tilt rotor, they've reimagined the experience of flight for more than 85 years. Check them out today at bellflight.com. And Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, AEM, leading by design, avionics solutions for fixed wing and rotor wing aircraft. Check them out today at aem-corp.com. Now, coming up next in this episode, we are joined by a flight nurse, and she's also the director of EMS education for Impact EMS training. Plus, she volunteers her time overseas to help those in need. The stories you're about to hear are amazing, and I'm so happy she joined me. So please welcome our next guest, Miss Gwenny Lawson. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real ResQ podcast. Today I've got a guest with me who, this is actually fun for me because I sat down and I had to do my paramedic research. And I went out and Googled a bunch of things, and I've been using this company for the past couple of years. So I highly recommend it to anybody that has to do a research. ImpactMed, right? And this is one of the lead instructor. You're the lead instructor in all this thing, aren't you?
I am. Yep, I'm the director of education. So we've been bought out by a parent company a couple of years ago. And so our name is no longer ImpactMed. We're Impact EMS, but it's fully a change in name. It's still the same instructors, the same quality education.
Beautiful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the lady who I sat for 60 hours, all right, maybe not quite 60 hours. It was probably a good 45 though, of Miss Gwenny Lawson. What's up, girl?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I've really been looking forward to this. This is going to be fun.
Oh, I've been so excited. And I think the more I was so excited because as I'm listening to all your stories, as you're instructing, and you know, we all have to go through research, whether you're a basic, yep. I mean, you know what? Forget it. Just basic CPR. You have to get recertified. Every 2 years, you go through a CPR class. Basics got to go through it. Intermediates got to go through it. Paramedics got to go through it. RNs got to go through it. Even docs got to go through some sort of like refresher training. So the fact that I sat down and I was listening to all of your stories and things you did, and then all of a sudden you're talking about CrossFit, and all of a sudden you're like, you know, when you were in Sunday school, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to have her on. I got to have her on. So that's how it happened. So I reached out. Now I'm so pumped this is happening. But all right, so now let's get this started a little bit. And Gwenny, I'd like to know a little bit background about you. So where are you from? How'd you grow up? And what brought you into medicine?
Yeah, so I grew up on a small farm in southern Illinois, and I live in Kansas City now. And kind of the bridge from how I got from there to here, the first time I knew I wanted to be a nurse was in second grade. I remember there was a book in my school library about how to be a nurse, and I would check it out and read it, return it to the library, go back the next week, check it out again. And it was like, if you looked at the little card that went in the envelope, you know, it was Gwen Stokes, Gwen Stokes, Gwen Stokes, all the way down, because I was the only one that would ever check it out. And I've always wanted to be a nurse. And then high school, I was on the track team, but my school was so small, we didn't have our own track team. I actually had to go two towns away to be on the track team because it was a 3-school co-op for a sports team because we were all such small schools that, you know, I was the only one from my school that went for the track team, and I made friends over there, and they learned pretty quickly that I'm kind of a clumsy goofball. And so the first year, I was a sophomore in high school. That was the first year they had pole vaulting for women. And my coach, he was real young, and he was basically our friend more than our coach. He said, hey, I bet you couldn't do that. And I was like, oh, you do, huh? And so I did it, and I won that track meet. And I went undefeated that year until I went to the state championship, and I got 5th in state that year. And it just so happens to be, I grew up a gymnast, that gymnastics really translated well to pole vault. And so I got a full ride scholarship to a school that didn't have a nursing program right out of high school. So I was like, no worries. I'll just go to med school. I'll just do pre-med instead, and I'll go to med school instead of nursing. This is going to work out perfect, because I was 17 and knew everything. And I went for my first year of college, and I was like, yo, chemistry is so hard. This is really boring. I don't think I want to do this anymore. So I switched to a psychology degree and graduated with my bachelor's in psychology, got married, started having kids. There's absolutely nothing you can do with a bachelor's degree in psychology. So I did some public school substituting, like long-term subbing, and I had my own business as a designer and seamstress for a few years, but I couldn't ever get nursing out of my mind. And I was like, I really wish I had gone to nursing school instead of taking that full ride, and getting that silly psychology degree. So I was married at the time. I'm better now. But I put my husband through his master's program. And when he finished school, I thought, you know what? It's my turn. I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to go through a nursing program. So I picked an accelerated program. It's a 4-year nursing degree in 15 months.
Holy smoke.
Yeah, it's like 21 hours, 4 semesters in a row. So you go fall, spring, summer, fall, and you're done. It's terrible, but it's over quickly.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So finished that and started right out in the emergency department in East St. Louis, because we were living in Illinois at the time, and spent about a year there. And then his job took us to Kansas City. I just kind of blankly applied to all of the ERs in Kansas City when we moved. And I took the first offer that was given to me, not knowing that it was the nickname of this hospital is the Knife and Gun Club of Kansas City. So I really quickly, I was a pastor's wife, a Southern Baptist pastor's wife, living in a bubble, right, of my Southern Baptist world. And wow, did that bubble get ruptured very quickly, because I'd never even heard of PCP. I didn't know what PCP was until I moved to Kansas City, because all we had in East St. Louis was heroin. We did heroin overdoses all day, every day. Super easy. Breathe for them until you can restore their respiratory drive. But PCP, holy shit, these guys are like the Hulk, So anyway, we would run 2 or 3 shootings at a time, pretty much all the time. I mean, it was not uncommon for us to do 10 or 12 GSWs in a shift. So I was there for a few years.
That'd be a gunshot wound. I gotta help those that don't know that. So gunshot wound.
Okay. Yeah, gunshot wound, stabbings. I mean, it was a rough patient population, a lot of chronic alcohol and drug use. People come in and just, throw a full urinal at us. I got, assaulted more times than I can count. And I finally was like, I'm done doing this. I'm tired. This is wearing on my soul. So I thought, well, I think I'm gonna try to go fly. Like, probably nobody will hire me yet. So I applied for a flight job, and I thought, well, it'll be good interview experience, for when I get a few more years under my belt. And I got hired. I got hired at my first attempt at flying. So I flew rotor wing transport for 2.5 years for that company. And then because I do enjoy money, I traveled during COVID. I went back to hospital nursing during COVID when the contracts were those high dollar. Did that for a couple of years and missed flying a lot. So now I teach full-time for Impact EMS. I teach flight medicine. I'm currently in Dallas right now teaching our flight course. And I fly PRN, usually about 1 24-hour shift a week. And then I still work in the ER PRN. And mostly because I don't want to lose my skills. That's where I get a ton of patient reps. On a flight shift, I might fly 3 or 4 patients on a busy shift. And working in the ER just keeps me, up to date on my skills and things like that. So we actually have to take our BLS and ACLS and PALS every quarter, not just every 2 years.
Oh my
God.
Do it
3 months. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know it by heart. So you know every question on the test. You're like B, A, D, C.
So it's actually like self-guided education. And then there's like 2 rooms in the hospital where they keep the mannequins. And so we just do the online portion of BLS, ACLS, and PALS. And it's just going through case studies. And I like it a lot better. I think it's really good for us. One thing I tell people as an instructor, I went to kind of the traditional BLS a few years ago when I was still traveling. And one of the instructors recognized me as a flight nurse in the area. And he said, this is probably bullshit for you. You don't need to be at BLS. And I said, actually, there's always an opportunity for me to learn something. I've taken BLS 100 times, but there's always a chance for me to learn something new, or refresh on something that I've forgotten.
Right.
So
It's cool that you say that, because one of the things that I was doing for myself is kind of mirroring what you're doing. Is I was an instructor for ACLS, PALS, and BLS at our local hospital for years. And it was only to keep up on my skills. So I knew when I wasn't working that when I would go back out there, okay. And then all of a sudden you like instructor mode comes out when you actually have a code. And you're like, all right, you there, not too fast, not too slow. I need a little deeper compressions.
yes,
I can totally
yes,
see you
and I
doing
really
that.
advocate as an instructor. I advocate for people, see one, do one, teach one. And I'll tell people like, look, even if you live alone and it's just you and your dog, teach your dog this content, because how much better did
Love it.
you become? How much better were
Oh yeah,
you
yeah,
in a code
yeah.
situation after you became an ACLS instructor?
Big
Because
time.
teaching it really solidifies your own knowledge. And one thing I love about being an instructor is it really holds the accountability high, because I don't want to walk into a class and look like a dumbass, right? So if I come across something that I'm unfamiliar with, or if a student asks me something, I'm like, I don't know, but I'm going to go back to my hotel tonight and study it for 3 hours so that tomorrow I can present a dissertation to you, right? And so it holds us accountable to making sure we know our shit.
Yeah, very much so. One of my favorites is actually when a question would come up that wasn't like totally through the book answer, and be like, you know what? Let's Google that. And all of a sudden we're bringing up some YouTube, and now it's on topic, but you're actually watching somebody get paced, or you're watching somebody get cardioverted. Like now all of a sudden you're bringing that, like it's not in the standard videos. So I always enjoyed that. And people are like, what? So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Awesome.
that. See, I knew there was a
Yeah.
reason you and I were going to talk. Absolutely. There was no doubt. There was no doubt. All right. So now I'll tell you what. So you've been doing this a long time. Now, so a lot of people that listen to this podcast do search and rescue, like jumping out of helicopters. That's what I did, and just like climbing mountains, saving people from distress. Right now, I've had conversations with other people of like, you know what? We in the medical world see some crazy stuff. And this is one of the things I loved about working in the ER for a little while, is because you never knew what would walk through the doors. You're like, oh yeah. And yeah, you and I could share stories all day. But for you, do you remember your very first like patient that really made an impact on you, and potentially you made an impact on them?
I do. I was a brand new nurse working in the ER in East St. Louis, and it was a family. So I don't have ICU experience, but this ER that I worked at, it essentially was an ER plus an ICU, because we never had beds. We would hold patients for days in the ER caring for these sick ICU patients. And I remember it was a patient who we had intubated the previous day. And I was back that day. And since I was familiar with her, I said, hey, give me her again. I'll take care of her. If I remember right, I was still on orientation, but it was near the end of my orientation. So my preceptor was pretty much letting me practice independently, which is scary because I still didn't know, you know, anything. And I was taking care, and the family decided that we're just going to go palliative care. We're going to extubate her. We're going to wait on all the family to get here, and then we're going to let her go peacefully, which honestly we should be doing more of, right? We give our, this is a whole separate conversation, but we give our dogs more dignified death experiences than we do for people. But that's probably a whole other podcast. Uh,
Agreed and
but
agreed.
yeah, we should be discussing this a lot more than we do in America. Anywho's, I remember getting the family, and I'm an empath. Like I will feel a lot of emotions. Yesterday, I lectured on death notifications to my class and told them, here's some things we can do to help that experience when we have a death on scene be more comfortable. And here's what we can do to help ourselves. And, and people in my class were speaking up, and I was crying big bubbly tears, but just because like I feel emotions from other people. And so I connected with this family really quickly. And as more family came in, grandkids come in, and, siblings, and everybody was coming in and connecting with the family and doing things like lowering the lights, bringing them some snacks and drinks. And then the last person got there, and we extubated the patient, and I turned off the ventilator. We turned off the monitor, and just being present in the room. And I tell you what, there's no greater honor than being in the room when someone either comes to earth, so someone is born, or someone leaves this earth, and we're walking them to the gates of heaven and handing them over to Jesus. And being there with that family and with that patient in that moment, I mean, that's been years, like over 10 years ago. And it's still like, I still have goosebumps and get a little teary when I think about that day, just connecting with that family. And what I didn't know was they had written a thank you letter to the CEO of the hospital, and I was given an award shortly after there. And I was like, oh my gosh, but it just connecting with that family, they taught me. That was my first death that I can remember in the ER. I hadn't even been in the ER that long, outside of like, an out of hospital cardiac arrest that comes in and we just call it. But
Yeah.
being there at the bedside with a family, that patient was really special to me. I learned a lot in that encounter. Yeah. And I still think of him often.
Aw, wow.
Yeah.
That's that's
That was a
good. I
special
like that.
place.
Yeah, very much so. Man, the whole family was with you too? Like everybody around
Yeah.
you?
There were probably, gosh, we probably had 20 people in the room.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so emotional. That's
It
wonderful.
is. It
I love
is.
that. I like you and I have probably had quite a few of the same where you have somebody that's coming in, you're performing CPR on a family member, and then doc says, bring the family in, and you watch them, everybody's crying in the ER together because we all know what has the like we
Hmm.
all know it's going to be called, but we're waiting until the family says okay enough, and you're like,
Hmm.
oh gosh, but that
You know,
goes so
that's
much further.
that it's
Like,
what gets me is not a patient dying, it's the family. Like, I remember my first like code that really kind of messed me up was a woman who wasn't terribly much older than my mom. She was too young to be dying. She was like upper 50s, maybe lower 60s, but the daughter was crying out to her mom. Literature shows that family does so much better in the grieving process if we bring them to the bedside, let them be present during resuscitation.
yeah,
And for the patient who's dying, they would like, if I was dying, I would much rather my family members be holding my hand and be telling me like, we love you, it's okay, you're safe,
yeah,
we're here with you, you're not dying alone, than some random paramedic or nurse, right? So I try to give that to my patients and to their family. So bring the family to the bedside. And the daughter was not ready to let her mom go yet. This was like something sudden. It wasn't like something that she knew was coming, like cancer or something. And she was calling out to her mom and like trying to strike an agreement with her mom, like, mom, if you come back, I'll clean your house for you, and mom, if you come back, we'll get matching tattoos. And like, her brain was like trying to reconcile the experience, and she was just screaming and crying out like, mom, don't go, don't go. And that's the stuff that messes with me more than just
yeah,
like, a death on a scene or what have you.
yeah.
It's tough.
Oh my gosh. I it can I tell you a story? Is that okay?
Yes, I would love to hear it.
All right, so I this happened not about a year ago, and I was out doing some training. Well, I was in a whole nother country, and we were out flying, and we got diverted. And as we got diverted, it was a CPR in progress on the beach. And what
Mm,
it was a vacation island, and we were out there, like I said, getting ready to like go hoist down to some boat, and again divert. So we go land on the beach, we run over CPR, sure enough, in progress. We pick the guy up, we run him over to the helicopter. We lay him down. We have nothing. Like none of our kit is in the helicopter. Half the medical stuff is back on base. And again, it was all training. And so anyway, so we put the patient in the helicopter, and then we bring the patient's wife. They were on vacation, and
mm,
he had a heart attack. And it like ate some water. All bad, all bad. We did CPR on him all the way back. The wife is in like sitting right behind me in my seat, and just like kind of tapping me. Is everything okay? And I'm like, we're doing everything we can, ma'am. Everything we can. We got back. And the greatest part about this whole endeavor is as soon as we landed, we had the paramedic come over to the helicopter, intubate him. We started pushing all the drugs that we needed to push. Um, and we got a pulse back. And it was like the greatest thing ever. Yeah. I like aspirated, like there was water and fluid all over the inside of the helicopter. All bad. Right. But the fact that we had a pulse back and now we're breathing for him, we get him in the ambulance. He lived for another 2 days, another like 48 hours, and then they had to pull the plug. But she had closure. So the
yes,
family, she was
yes.
with us all the time. And I'm trying not to cry in the helicopter because she's all like, and I'm like, oh. So that's
Mm.
I feel
You
you.
know, I used to get a little bit salty when we would waste blood products on a patient. Like I remember when I was working at the safety net hospital downtown Kansas City, we had a patient that was brought in. He was 18 years old. He was running from the cops. He didn't have his seatbelt on. He was driving like a bat out of hell on the highway, and he hit a concrete post on an underpass. And of course was thrown from the car. And I remember when he first came into the trauma bay, I was one of the circ nurses. We would always have two circs and a scribe working on the patient. And it was a teaching hospital, so several residents and attending. And I said to the other nurse, I'll pick up his hips if you'll pull his jeans out from underneath his butt. And when I picked up his midsection, it was like picking up a sack of jello. Like there was no structure left to it. So I knew this kid was just obliterated. And we're throwing blood products in him left, right, and center. And we put 30 blood products in the ER. The other nurse and I went up to the OR with him, and we put another 30 blood products in him while the OR team was working on him. They moved him to the ICU. They put another 30 products in him. And I remember saying to my colleagues, why are we doing this? Why are we wasting all of these blood products on this patient that we know is not viable? But then I heard the next morning, like he was at the start of our shift, I heard the next morning they were able to get his parents there and a sibling and a couple of friends at the bedside to be with him when he died. And if it cost us 90 blood products to be able to let his parents say goodbye to him, as a parent,
Yeah.
I'll pay for 90 blood products every single time. I'll go to the blood bank myself for the rest of my life and
Yeah.
donate 90 blood products if that gives me an opportunity to say goodbye to my child. So sometimes, you know, it might seem like an adventure in futility to try to resuscitate someone, but it's not just about saving that patient's life. There's so many other things that we need to consider, like, you know, letting their family have an opportunity to say goodbye, or the possibility of using those organs. You know, not to
Yeah.
sound morbid, like sometimes it's about transporting a still functional heart, because we might be able to get that. Even though there's a catastrophic head injury, that's still a functioning heart that we might be able to salvage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's amazing what we as professionals in rescue, EMS, hospital, doctors, nurses, how much of an impact we have on a community. And people,
yeah.
I don't think people, and I don't use this term very often, but I don't think people totally get the impact outside that drop of water and how far those ripples actually go.
Yep. Yeah. And you
So,
know, when you do take a moment to consider it, that scares the shit out of me. That's a lot of
right?
power hold in our
Yeah.
hands. Like, man, I got to be on my A game.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time. Every time.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. It
Gwenny.
matters. The stuff we do matters.
Absolutely. Gosh. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical Helicasts and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
All right, so let me divert a little bit more because I want to come back onto you. More stories. I love these stories, by the way. I cannot ever get enough of them. There are a couple stories that you kind of mentioned to me already, and I just want to listen to some of them. So one of your favorites you had mentioned to me was Hem's case with a medical perspective was a traumatic arrest. You got ROSC, which is return of spontaneous circulation. And then you went to the trauma room or the trauma center, and then you spent 90 days in the ICU. What happened?
Yeah, so this was actually a pretty wild case as well. I was working with another nurse, which in Missouri you can fly nurse. I was working a lot of overtime, so there was an open medic spot, and they let me pick it up. So it was one of my nurse colleagues and we got called to. Originally, they said meet us on I-29 north of Kansas City, and we said, "Yep, can do," on our way. And then while we were en route, they said, "You know what? Meet us on the pad in this little bitty town where the ER, has like, a podiatrist covering it. There's not an ER physician there. Might be a 24-year-old nurse practitioner or something, like not someone who's equipped to handle a traumatic arrest." So we said, "Yep, we can divert and meet you on the pad." So we meet them on the pad. Usually when we do that, we don't go into the hospital. As long as we don't intend to go into the hospital, it's not an EMTALA violation. So we jump in the back of the ambulance, and I can see, well, the guy's right arm has been amputated. And what had happened was there was a man who was trying to commit suicide by cop. And so to achieve that, he was going to go out and kill as many people as he could. And his first order of business was to hit a motorcyclist on the highway. And he hit the motorcyclist, threw the operator off of his motorcycle, and a mile marker sign ripped off his right arm. So that was our patient, was the motorcycle operator. So we jump in the back of the ambulance. I see that the patient is modeled and copy paper white. And I was like, oh, he's about to arrest. Like, if he's not in arrest right now, he's going to. So my partner and I said, let's go inside and use as many resources and hands here as we can to stabilize him, because we have a 45-minute flight up to Omaha, because we were in the middle of Omaha and Kansas City, but the winds were going to take us to Omaha faster. So we take him inside, and we hadn't been inside 30 seconds that my partner was setting up to intubate. I was drilling him. His amputation was not bleeding, but we kind of had a tourniquet fixed sideways. We didn't carry a junctional tourniquet, and the hospital didn't have one. And right as she was fixing to intubate, I noticed that our capnography fell and I couldn't palpate a pulse. She and I were running the code with lots of hands helping. I was on the chest. Of course, I felt his ribs break, as you always do when you're the first one on the chest. We give one round of epi. They start pushing blood. My partner intubates while I'm doing compressions, and we get him back within one round of CPR. And I was like, fantastic. So we start push dose pressors. We're still giving blood. We asked them, at the time, I don't think we carried our own blood. So they sent us with a bunch of blood. And to warm it, I always put 2 units of blood in my bra. And I'll usually put, one in each thigh pocket, because on our flight suit, the pockets are huge. And so I've got 4 units of blood warming up on my person. It was in June, so it's pretty warm. And so we hop in the helicopter, we throw him on our vent, we start to take off. Of course, our P-plats jump. That's plateau pressure. That's an indicator that you've developed a pneumothorax. We ended up needling him 7 times to decompress him on the way to Omaha. And the only reason we stopped needling him is because we ran out of chest darts. And that was when I started carrying more chest darts on my person. That's one of the few things that I actually carry all the time. And so we get him to Omaha. I've got his arm in a Rubbermaid storage tote on ice that the nurses handed to me on the way out. And so we get him up to Omaha. We hand over report. And I was thinking, man, no way this guy is going to live. Their chances of surviving a traumatic arrest is less than 1%. Like, there's just no chance people survive that. I also remember this very silly thought I had in the moment while his arm was in that Rubbermaid storage tote. I was like, he's going to be pissed. This is a lot of tattoos. That's a lot of time in the chair that he's now lost. That's going to be upsetting. Anyway, we hand over a report. They resuscitate him. We clean up our helicopter. We return to service. I get up the next morning at the end of my shift. My phone rings. It's my friend that I used to work in the ER with. And she said, hey, Gwenny, were you on yesterday at LifeNet? And I said, yeah. And she said, did you fly that motorcycle off I-29? And I said, yeah, how'd you know that? And she said, that was my brother. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea that was your brother. And she said, and this was during COVID when you couldn't have visitors in the hospital. And she said, I'm so tore up. She said, we've kind of been estranged for a while. But she said, I'm going to be the next of kin to make the decisions for him. And I said, do you want to know what happened? Would you rather not know, or do you want to know? And she was another ER nurse. And she said, I want to know. So I told her everything that had happened, because she couldn't go see him because of the COVID visitor rules. And I said, he did arrest on us. I said, I told her everything that we had done. And I said, he's really sick. He is really sick, and I'm going to be surprised if he makes it. And so we stayed in touch throughout his recovery. He spent 90 days. He had a spleen laceration. He had a liver laceration. He had multiple spinal fractures. He had a broken femur. He had a significant gash in the same femur that he broke, but it wasn't from the break. It was from another sign cutting him. They were not able to reattach his right arm. He had a traumatic brain injury and catastrophic blood loss. So, these are all terrible injuries to have in isolation, but when you put them all together, it's an absolute miracle that he survived. And so I was kind of going through a dark period in my own life during that time. And in that 90 days that he was in the ICU, I was kind of at the beginning of and I attempted suicide in that 90 days. Yeah, my friend that was the sister of the patient, she knew that had happened, and that I had left my flight job in that time and started traveling during COVID. And so she knew that I was kind of struggle busing hardcore. And she said, hey, we're having a small family get together to surprise him when he comes home from the hospital. He's going to live with me and I'll take care of him for a while. Would you be here for that? And I felt like that was so meaningful to me as the nurse to have, been there when he arrested. And so nobody else in the family knew that I was coming. And when I walked in, it was such a powerful moment. He, of course, didn't recognize me. She knew who I was. but she introduced him to me. And he had been part of a motorcycle gang, with a bunch of these really rough guys. And they're all crying, and they've hugged me and said, they've got like chains hanging down off their waistbands, and they're big tough guys wearing, a t-shirt with like a gun on it. And, they've got tattoos and facial piercings and these big burly beards. And they just hugged me and said, "Thank you for saving our friend." And I was like, "No, thank you guys for saving me. Like, I have a purpose to be alive, to keep doing this stuff, And it was he to this day is my most remarkable patient that I've ever taken care of. And he and I go out to lunch about once a year. He has really made changes to his life. He's found Jesus. He's no longer in the motorcycle gang. He can't ride a motorcycle anymore. But he has a lot of deficits from his accident, so he can't work anymore. But he's just a really special guy that has impacted my life. His sister and I are great friends now, and we talk often. And that was just a really special case. It was during a hard time in my life. It made a big impact on him. He made a big impact on me, and he's just a great case.
Oh, Gwenny, amazing. Those are the ones that stick with us. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for letting me tell it.
Heck yeah. My goodness. You still keep in touch once a year? You still get together?
Yeah, we have lunch about once a year or so. He lives like maybe 30 minutes north of me. So we stay Facebook friends. I'm not on Facebook very often, but every once in a while I'll see him post something and I'll text him and say, "Hey, you want to go to lunch?" And so I'll go pick him up and we'll go have lunch.
Aw, that's amazing. Gwenny, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to another one because there's another call out that you had. And I keep wanting to say rescue, but this one actually kind of is because you had to do some stuff to get to the patient, bring them back to the helicopter. You landed on a Sandbar. What is this?
We did. It was the perfect crew configuration because none of my other pilots would have done it, and I don't think any of my other partners would have done it. It was a nurse.
That's a great way to start.
Yeah, it was another nurse it was his first shift off of orientation. So we were flying nurse again. And, he was pretty young and go-getter. But we got a call from dispatch and they said, "Would you be willing to land on a Sandbar?" And the pilot said, "There's enough room for the skids. Yeah, sure. Let's do it." And they said, "Okay, we've got a case for you." So we fly out. It's nighttime. Of course, there's no light on the Sandbar. But it was a patient who was inner tubing, floating on the river. And it was at nighttime. And she was a bigger gal. She was like 6'2" and weighed probably close to 300 pounds. But she was wearing slide-on shoes in the dark, in the river. Yeah. And she slipped on a rock and she had an open tib fib. But because of where she was, they could not evacuate her out to reach her into any of the trucks. The riverbank was too high. So she wasn't critically ill like most of our patients are. It was just they couldn't extricate her out. And so my pilot said, "Yep, we can do it." And so we landed on the Sandbar. The patient was on the other side. The Sandbar was obviously surrounded by water. So we had to wade through. And I'm, of course, a woman. My partner was a man. So I've got my jump bag, or our first out bag, on my back. He has the monitor. And I've got two first responders, 2 firefighters, one on each side of me, helping me wade through the water. Because even, knee-deep water, when it's moving, it can make you go ass over tea kettle real quick. And so we're crossing the river. And I said, "How's Sean doing back there?" And I turned back to look at my partner. Ain't nobody helping Sean. He's got the monitor above his head, like slipping left, right, and center in the river, following me. I was like, "Somebody needs to help Sean. He's going to fall and drop the monitor in the water." So we get across the river. I get to the patient. They've got her strapped down to a long spine board, which was an extra wide one, which at the time I didn't even know long spine boards came in extra wide. That will come into play later in this story. So we get to her. She's totally stable, just an extremity injury. I said, "Sean, we do not need to put her on the monitor and try to balance that when we're carrying her back through the water." I said, "Why don't you go back to the helicopter, get it out and ready and open for us, and we'll meet you over there." And he says, "Okay." So he traipsed back through the water with the monitor over his head. And the ding-dong kept the narcs in his leg pocket, so they were full of water. I'm like, "You ding-dong." So we pick her up. We're carrying her. There's 6 of us carrying her. We each have about a 50-pound load because she's 300 pounds divided by 6 of us, and we're walking through water. And I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done, because if we drop this, she's going to drown because she is strapped to this long spine board.
Yeah.
This is the worst idea I've ever had. So we eventually make it back over. It's dark. This was in July. It was hot. You know, the mosquitoes are like softball size down there by the river. There's like, I don't know, probably 30 or 40 other first responders. Of course, everyone has their phone out videoing it, because this is a cool, sexy scene, you know, to put on the Facebook. And we pick up the long spine board. We try to put it in our helicopter. Normally, long spine boards fit on the cot of our 407, and we can advance it in. Mind you, she has a tib fib, so her ankle is like hanging off of her leg. I'm trying to load her in the dark, and as I'm trying to get her in, I can't get it in. And then I realize, gosh, dang it, that's her foot catching on the boom. And so she's screaming bloody murder, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that probably hurt so bad when I just whacked her foot trying to advance her in. So I've got my partner holding her foot. We're trying to get her in. And then I realized the long spine board is too wide to fit into the little, if it fits at ship's spot in a 407. You have to have the body shape of a tube of toothpaste to be a patient in a 407. And so I'm like, Sean, we have to get her off of this long spine board. Well, all of the other people who helped me carry her, they're already on the other side of the river. They didn't walk back through the water, and they've got their phones out videoing Sean and I on struggle bus trying to get this woman in. So I said, we're going to have to pull it over to the side, unbuckle her, dump her onto our cot, and then pull the cot out from underneath her. So we're doing it. We're trying to get her in. And Sean starts carrying the long spine board back across the river. I was like, brother, throw it in the damn water. Don't worry about it. Just let it go. Let it go. Somebody can find it upstream. I was like, let's get out of here. We look like idiots. And my pilot, you know, I'm plugged in. My pilot's like, what are you guys doing back there? So we finally get her in. And no sooner I had done that I sucked in one of those giant mosquitoes into my mouth. And then I gagged. I'm retching over the skid while all these people are videoing this scene. My pilot is like, what is happening? Get in. I was like, I'm trying to yak up this giant mosquito. I'm so embarrassed. The patient is crying. I'm like, Sean, go around to your side and get in. Let's get out of here. I shit you not. 5 seconds later, Sean sucks in one of those giant mosquitoes. Now he's retching. I'm like, get in here, crap. Let's get out of here. So we both get in. There's an inch of standing water in the bottom of the helicopter. I'm like, get this poor woman some fentanyl. She is in so much pain. We are both soaking wet halfway up our thighs. And he goes, oh no. And I was like, what? And he said, the narcs were in my leg pocket. And I was like, no. I said, just open it. Surely the vials are fine. So he pulls out the Pelican case and opens it, and water goes and falls out of it. And I was like, it's fine. It's fine. The vial was intact. We were able to give her some fentanyl. Our flight was like 7 minutes to the hospital. We walk into the hospital, squeak, 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 with our wet boots. And they're like, what has happened here? I was like, let's not ask questions. She has a broken leg. Let's focus on her. Like, why are you guys wet and muddy? Nothing at all. There's nothing to see here. Then we go out of service because we have to get all the water out of the aircraft and change our flight suits and dry out our boots. But oh my gosh, that was the funniest flight ever. It was so much fun. It's a really funny story. It was even funny that night. I still have a picture from that flight of my pilot.
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please. Please send that to me.
Oh yeah, I'll have to find it and send it to you afterwards.
Okay.
But you know, that was a really great flight that, like, we made it happen. You know, it was unconventional that we had never landed on a sandbar before. We'd never waded through the water to go get the patient. You know, she wasn't critically ill like most of our patients. And I mean, we only ran into like 43 hiccups throughout the course of it, but man, it was fun. And we learned to, like, we figured it out. Like, you just find a way to make it happen. Mosquitoes and all.
Gosh. Oh my God, Gwenny. That is hilarious. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Oh, it was fun.
No, I can't say it enough. This is why I love doing this. I love these stories. They're amazing. You can't make this stuff up. You just can't.
I know. Oh, goodness.
Oh, dang, girl. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, a leading manufacturer of trusted special mission avionics for law enforcement, aerial firefighting, and utility operators. Visit www.aem-corp.com and learn how AEM's digital communication and loudspeaker systems, avionics consoles, radios, and specialty audio products can support your most demanding missions.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you got any more, I'm happy. I'm on board. Whatever you got, I love these. So if you got another one, let it ride.
Oh, man. We haven't even touched my Haiti stories yet.
That's right. All right, you know what? Let's get into that because you volunteer your time down in Haiti. Oh
I
my
do.
gosh. That's
I do.
incredible.
Yeah. So I started going with groups, with church groups back in 2015. And if you've ever done any kind of voluntourism is kind of the word for it, third world country kind of work or developing nation work, we kind of mess things up a lot as like the white savior complex. And I look back at my early trips and think, oh my gosh, I broke all the rules. I did all the wrong things. There's this book, if anybody's interested in reading it, it's called When Helping Hurts. And it's about when we, as particularly the white American church, go into developing nations and try to do our own thing, and we make things worse, right? We take school supplies and hygiene products and peanut butter and granola bars and hand them out to Haitian families. And what we don't realize that we've done is we've put the woman in the community who makes her own peanut butter, we've just put her out of business for 2 months because we brought 250 pounds of peanut butter. And we feel really good about, hooray, look at us. And we take pictures with brown babies and put them on our Facebook page. Look what we did. And really, we mess things up long term for the people who live and work there full time. And so after about my second or third trip with a group, I realized, I read that book, When Helping Hurts, and I realized like, I'm going about this the wrong way. I am not doing this in a helpful way. My good intentions are coming out in a bad way. And so then I committed to only partnering with people who live and work there full time and joining their mission. Instead of me bringing my ideas and what I want to do, instead, I'm going to find out what they're doing that helps in the community that they've established these long-term relationships, and I'll join them in what they're doing in whatever ways that I can. And so as a matter of fact, my son went with me twice. He was 8 and 10, the 2 times that he went with me. And Haiti has really deteriorated. I mean, especially in the last couple of months, as we all have seen in the news, but really it's been since about 2018 is when things have been really bad in Haiti. And I didn't feel like I could take groups anymore. I couldn't be accountable for anybody else's life. And I didn't want to have to get other people out of a sticky situation. I thought at least I can get myself out of a sticky situation if I need to. And so I started traveling and going down and working with a group called HERO. It stands for Haitian Emergency Response Organization. And it was started by an amazing woman. Her name is Stacy LeBrandy Bourne. And she was actually like a supermodel here in the United States in the 90s. And she had retired from modeling and she was working as a photographer with the US State Department. And she went down after the earthquake in 2010 and she was photographing United States military members work down there. Like the Marines rebuilt a lot of the road infrastructure there. And she said, where are all of the ambulances? Where are the fire trucks? And they said, they don't have that here. And she said, okay, well, I quit my job at the State Department. And she lived like a Haitian for years. She lived on like $1 US per day, eating avocados and drinking black coffee. When she tells the story, she said, my hair and skin were like a Grecian goddess because all she ate were avocados and drink black coffee. You know, just great for your skin. But she did her comfortable life in the United States and she's extremely gifted in logistics. And so she got some ambulances donated from the United States and she hired some Haitian staff. And her trucks are, for the first several years, were staffed by a Haitian driver. So I know that like ambulance driver is a really offensive term in the United States, but that's literally what they are in Haiti. She hires multilingual interpreters to be drivers. And then she hired Haitian EMTs, which that didn't exist before she started HERO. And then she got US military groups to come down and volunteer with her, and they would train her Haitian EMTs, and then they would provide the ALS care on the trucks. And so the drivers would serve as the interpreter between the American and sometimes Canadian paramedics that came down as a volunteer between the patient, and they would interpret for the EMT. She's had her EMTs long enough now that most of them speak pretty good English. And all the training that they have received has just been on the job training. Well, about 2019 and into 2020, volunteers quit coming down. And so she hired some Haitian physicians who now ride on the trucks. And so that's how they're able to offer ALS level care. And so she survives off of mostly donations and memberships from like missionaries and NGOs and expats who live down there, buy a membership to her ambulance. But most of her transports are charity work, taking NICU babies out from little clinics in the rural communities and bringing them back to the NICU in Port-au-Prince. Trauma is, I have had more trauma cases in my 2-week stints working in Haiti than I have in my 10-year career here in the United States. That's an everyday thing because there isn't a proper side of the road in Haiti. It's just like find an area to drive and YOLO it, and the two biggest forms of public transit are motos, which are like little 75cc motorcycles. My personal record is I've seen 8 on one of those at a time, 8 people on
8
those. But I've
people?
seen,
Oh
yes,
my gosh.
they'll stack them on, just some kids riding on the handlebars. I mean, they just pile on. The other one is tap taps, which are little like a little Chevy S10 that they put like a camper shell on and 2 benches that run parallel to the truck. And everybody just climbs in. So you can imagine when any of these wreck, it's just
Oh yeah.
catastrophic injuries, and you've got 13 patients on every scene, So we get a ton of trauma care. And these Haitian EMTs who've never been through an EMT program, they just get spotty on-the-job training from volunteers, are phenomenal. They are fantastic. They know how to appropriately start an IV and give TXA in a trauma patient. They know if there's an open
Dang.
fracture or penetrating trauma to give a gram of Ancef. They know how to treat pain. They are phenomenal. And so many of my little tips and tricks that I know how to do, I have learned from my Haitian colleagues. So I lost track. I just went in January, and I think it was either my 12th or my 13th trip. But I mean, anybody can go down there and volunteer. You can't go right now. Just because of the unrest. Actually, the airport shut down maybe 3 weeks ago, and there's no way in or out of the country. I tried to get down there about 2 weeks ago. I was talking to my contact who lives and works down there, and I said, what if I fly down to DR and we can just hire a pilot to fly me over to Haiti? He said, absolutely not, Gwenny. You're not coming down right now. But once hopefully things settle down soon, if your listeners are interested, you can find the Hero. Just Google Hero Haiti, and you can volunteer with them, and it's great experience.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. I imagine because of the diverse, how do I want to say this? The diverse medical realm, like you get some serious good skill set, skill set down there, just working on stuff that you might not normally see.
I was down there last summer, and I went for a day to a hospital in a community called City Soleil. And they never get volunteers because even by Haitian standards, it's in a rough part of town. That community is typically volunteers don't feel safe going to that area of Port-au-Prince. But I really trust my guys, and I know they would never take me anywhere where I'm going to be in danger. So I said, yeah, let's go out there. Let's spend a day. We did some training. We taught all of their non-medical staff BLS training. So like their cooks, the daycare workers, the guard shack guys, taught them all BLS because it's not just at the hospital, but we want these guys to be out in the community providing BLS care as best they can, and taught them first aid. And that's what all the guys do when they're not on calls. They're constantly out teaching, first aid care, BLS. They're fantastic, especially for having never been through a formal education program. So we were at this hospital, and there was a NICU. And during one of our breaks from our class, I told my EMT colleagues, I said, hey, I'm going to go peek through the NICU window and just look at all the babies. And I went down, and I was peeking in the windows and looking at the babies. And I noticed that they were trying to start a line on a baby. And the neonatologist was trying, and the NICU nurse was trying, and I noticed they couldn't get it. And I thought, I wonder if they want another set of hands. And I speak BT Creole, not very much Creole at all.
Okay.
And this particular team didn't speak any English. And so I popped my head in the NICU, and as best we could, I communicated, do you want some help? Do you want me to try? I mean, I'm not a NICU nurse, but I'm happy to try. And they said, yeah, sure. And I said, is it okay if I started in the baby's head? And they looked at me like, you're going to do what? And the neonatologist understood, and he knows that that's how we do it with NICU babies in America. And he said, yeah, let her try it. And this baby was a 28-week-old preemie. I have never taken care of a 28-week-old preemie. For those of you not in medicine, 40 weeks is a full-term pregnancy. So this baby was 3 months early, very tiny.
Yeah.
She was 2 pounds. She was 1 kilo, so 2 pounds, extremely small. And nobody could get a line on this baby. They stuck this baby like 8 times. And I said, if you don't mind, I'm going to try to stick this baby in the head. And really, I was like, Jesus, I need some strong support here.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Jesus, take the IV hub. And no one was more surprised than me when it went in and it flushed. And I was like, I'm retiring. This is it. I'm batting 1,000 for NICU babies. That's it. I'm done. And they were like, oh, merci, merci. Thank you, thank you. And they said, we have another baby that needs one. And I was like, no, that was so much emotional turmoil getting that. The baby was crying and I was singing to the baby. What I did not know was that the neonatologist had filmed me from across the room. And here I am in scrubs that did not fit, because to go into the NICU, you have to put scrubs on over your street clothes. And he had videoed it and I'm singing to this baby and I get the IV and it goes in and you can see like, oh, the relief on me when it finally goes in. And he posted the video and it got picked up by like North American Rescue. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like drenched in sweat. So anyway, they're like, can you do this other baby? And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I got that one. Can you do this other one? And we went through 5 babies. And finally I said, I'm done. I can't handle this anymore. This is too much stress. I'm tapping out after 5 babies. So then they just let me feed and snuggle the babies for a while, which of course was really good for my heart. But I don't normally get NICU experience. I've never worked in a NICU before. But I tell you what, now when I'm home, as a matter of fact, just 2 weeks ago, I was working an ER shift and there was a baby, 11-day-old baby that nobody could get a line on. I said, I'll give it a whirl, and slammed one right in the baby's head right there. And it was because I had that NICU experience in Haiti. So yeah, I get tons of experience. I take care of DKA patients down there. I've taken care of severe malnutrition cases. Like I've never seen kwashiorkors here in the United States because we have, government assistant programs. If people can't afford food, we'll get them food. And that's just not a thing in Haiti. So, I've seen adults and children alike dying of starvation, and I see pathologies that I never see in the United States.
Down there. Yeah. Wow. You got me semi. Actually, no, you've got me a lot motivated. Between you and then another guy, Bobby O'Donnell, he went down there and flew on the air ambulance down there because he was talking about the same thing. I'd love to go do that, even just to start.
It's a really cool opportunity.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's not for everybody. You've got to be super flexible because you never know what's going to come. It's like some days when I was there in January, I did no patients. I took care of no patients. All I did was education while I was there. And that's okay. Of course, patient care is more fun. I love doing patient care. I'll never leave the bedside. But what makes a bigger impact is me teaching other people new skills. Like to my knowledge, nobody has ever taught NRP, which is Neonatal Resuscitation Program in Haiti. And I used Google Translate to translate all of the algorithms into Creole and printed them out and had them laminated and took them with me. And so every hospital that I teach NRP at, they now have the NRP algorithm on the wall that they can follow. And so that's going to have a bigger impact than me working one day in a NICU and getting a couple of lines on the babies there.
Yeah. Wow. Way to go above and beyond, Gwenny. Jeez.
It has like going to Haiti isn't for them. Me going to Haiti is for me. Like it really helps my perspective on the world. Like I don't get too bent out of shape over things here because I'm like, I have running water. I have a safe house. I can drive to work without fear of being shot. Shit doesn't matter. Shit doesn't matter here. So it's for me. It's, a little bit of altruism, but mostly it helps my heart. It really does.
I like that. I like that a lot, Gwenny. That's good stuff. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for letting me.
Yeah, heck yeah. Between you and Bobby, you know what? We'll talk. We'll talk after this.
Let's do it. Maybe we can meet in person in Haiti sometime. We'll both go down.
Oh man, how cool would that be?
Yeah,
super cool. Then you can teach me everything.
Oh, you'll learn from them. You'll learn from the Haitian EMTs. Man, they are so clever. They're so smart.
Okay. Tease me with a good time. I got to get my wife to buy off on this. Yeah, she'll be all right.
Yeah, that's why my little brother won't go with me because my sister-in-law won't let him go. She's heard too many of my stories, and she's like, "You shall not be taking my husband there with you. He's a paramedic, and he would love to come, and he would do fantastic." But my sister-in-law vetoed it. I got to quit telling my stories at the Christmas table. She can't know.
Well, I'm enjoying them. Yeah. You know what? I just appreciate some of them. So this is good. This is really good.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. I've had you on for a little while, so I'd like to push on a little bit more. And actually, I want to fall back a little bit. Do you guys do you fly with night vision goggles? You were mentioning you're flying at night. Yeah.
Yep. We fly NVGs, and so the airframe that I fly in at my program is an MD-902, which we are the only program in the United States that flies in an MD-902. It is a
Wow.
fantastic airframe to fly in. So when I was with my first company that I flew with, we had, depending on which base I was at, we either had an EC-130, which is great for
Okay.
patient care, not quite as fast, not quite as steady in the sky either. It's a little wobbly. They're also pretty maintenance heavy, but or 407, which
Yeah.
you really only have access to your patient from the nipple line up, and you really need a right AC on every patient, to have good access. But it's a little bit faster than the 130. Neither of them are terrible. But then moving into a program that has a 902, I'm like, look at all of this room for activities of patient care. It's a fantastic airframe. The only drawback is that I can't see where we're going when I'm sitting in back because the curtain is up. So our medic
Oh, yeah.
rides up front anytime there's not a patient on board. They ride in the co-pilot seat. And so I'm on goggles in the back, but I'm not really doing a whole lot on goggles.
Gotcha.
Every once in a while, they'll let me switch out up front just to like stay current and, work the radios or what have you. But if we don't have a patient on board, the medic rides up front and like co-pilots, with the pilot and has a good outlook on where we're going.
Very cool. No, that's great. That's great. That's always good to hear. I like that. I like to fly on goggles. The programs that I was working with were all flying on goggles, and it's that the best way to explain it is go try driving your car without your lights on. See how far you get. Like all of a sudden
Yep.
you put night vision goggles on and you can see everything. It's, oh my gosh. And I know a lot of programs are like, well, they're really expensive. Yes. So is an accident.
A return on investment is pretty good
Yeah,
on
big time.
NFTs. I can't imagine going without them.
Yeah. No, I don't like flying without them right now, but all right. So, with all your flying and everything you've done, is there anything that stands out to you that you would have done a little bit different?
When I first came to flying, I came straight out of the ER. And in the ER, especially in the ER where I was working, usually in ERs, the nurse has 3 patients. There's a 3-to-1 ratio. At that safety net hospital I was working at that kind of knife and gun club, it was not uncommon for me to have 5, 6, 7 patients. So I was constantly having to move fast, 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 run, 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 run. I mean, I would burn 2,000 calories in a shift all the time. I was just going, going, going all the time. I'd be drenched with sweat by the time I was done because it was essentially a 12-hour marathon of running, doing this, running, doing that. And I thought I was a pretty good ER nurse. And when I came to flight, I was still in the sympathetic surge of go, 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 go. Tones would drop.
Yeah.
You better not be standing between Gwenny and the door because I am making a beeline. I am running to the helicopter. And it was all about I'm like, it's a helicopter. We're selling speed. We have to be fast. Yeah, let's go. And my partners would get so frustrated with me. They're like, slow down. And I'm like, I don't need to slow down. I'm getting everything done. And I've always been clumsy. And it wasn't until a pilot said, do you think maybe you're not clumsy and it's just that you're always moving too fast? And it kind of hurt my feelings. But anytime I get criticism, the first thing I do is look for any truth in it. And then if there isn't, then I can dismiss it. But I was like, shoot, there's truth in that. He's probably right. Like I was kind of always the goofball, the clown of the base, because I would do things like trip over a skid, and that was really funny. Or, I would, drop things or whatever, always clumsy. And I was like, he's right. It's not that I'm just organically clumsy. It's that I am always trying to do things so fast that I end up costing myself more time in the end. And so I remember in 2019, I set my intention. My goal for that year was I am going to learn to slow down. I'm going to learn to be more intentional with my pace and not get so spun up over things. And I tell you what, that was a hard year of work to put in on myself because speed was, I thought, one of my strengths, but it was actually one of my weaknesses. And so I'll still move pretty quick on things, but sometimes I take a second and just slow down. Even in teaching, like my speech cadence can be really fast. And I've had to slow down because students say, I can't keep up with you. You're so fast. So
Yeah.
that year
Me too.
of setting my intention of slowing down with my patient care, slowing down with getting to the aircraft. I can walk with purpose. There is no reason for me to be knees to chest sprinting to the helicopter. My partner is still inside taking a dump before we get in the aircraft, right? So like I had one part. It was like Pavlov's dogs. Like tones would go off, he has to poop. I'm like, come on, Mike, let's go. But just slowing down. And I remember somebody telling me, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And I was like, no, I can just be fast. And he was like, no, Gwenny, you need to slow down. And he was right. Slow is smooth, and smooth does become fast. And I'm not nearly as clumsy when I slow down.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that one. I find the same thing for me as well, as like take a moment and I mean, that's, yeah, no, I'm on board. Yeah. Nice. Good advice.
And it's
That's
hard
awesome.
for us, like high performers, like almost everybody who's in HEMS is a type A personality, and we do things fast and we want to just blast through things. We're a bull in a china shop. That's why we've gotten to the point that we're at, because we're successful. We make shit happen.
Right.
But it's not going to work in
Yeah.
aviation. You got to slow down, take a moment. That was a
It's like
hard
a
lesson for me.
CrossFit workout for time.
I
Let's
know.
go.
Like, boop, 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 go. And you take off running. Like, nah, this
I
is
did
not
it
for
in
time.
7 minutes and 13 seconds. Let's go.
Oh, goodness.
That's hilarious. All right, so with all of the stuff that you've done now, and I want to get into just a little bit of the training, because you're working with ImpactMed, and this is your full-time job now. So you're working in ER, and you fly, you said, once a week, just to keep up your skills, but you're full-time training. So
Yes.
the reason I want to talk about this is because I love the training side of this, and I love teaching. Part of my other job is doing teaching and helicopter rescue stuff, but I love to be in it, so that when I go to a class, I'll be like, man, I did this like last week, and this is what happened, and this is why. And I love
Yep.
that part of it. So what I'd like to know from you is the training itself. Why do you do it? And then things you get out of the training.
Yeah. So as I'm the director of education at Impact EMS, and one of the things that I require of my instructors is everybody has to still be actively participating in critical care. So all of our critical care instructors still fly full time, with the exception of one. He's a thick boy, so he does critical care on the ground, right? So he's not in a rudder program, but he is the clinical director of his program, and he's still on a truck all the time. I think it's so important for us as instructors. And I have a good friend that she's another educator, and we disagree on this, and that's okay for us to disagree. I think that educators should still be practicing at a minimum in a PRN capacity, whatever it is that they're teaching. Because I feel like, how many instructors have you had where they haven't touched a patient in 10 or 20 years and they have lost touch? They have forgotten what it's like, right? We can't always follow the textbooks exactly, because patients don't always follow what the textbooks tell us they're going to look like. There's always some kind of outlying circumstance that impacts the situation, and they forget that, and they Monday morning quarterback it. And I don't want to be teaching things that I'm not still actively doing. This knowledge, these skills, this is perishable.
Yeah.
And so I'm a single mom
totally
of 3 kids, but I have a full-time job teaching. I fly rotor, 1 24-hour shift a week, and I work in the ER 2 or 3 12-hour shifts. And then I have my own side gig too. I have Nurse Gwenny. I just published a book, and I have a social media kind of education.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I have a lot going on, and people are like, why are you still working in the ER? Like, you're obviously making enough at your full-time job. You don't need these other incomes. And I'm like, no, but I want the skills. And I just love the ER. I love being at the bedside. I hope that I never have to leave that. And I love flying. It's so cool, right? Like,
yeah,
man, the smell of Jet A and the feel of the rotors when they start up and it starts shaking. There's something special about it that I never want to give that up. And being an instructor, I feel like, makes me a better clinician too, because it raises that accountability. It makes me a better practitioner because I teach these things.
Awesome. I love flying too, just so you know. Like, right, when they pull the power and the aircraft just comes off the ground, and then all of a sudden they start climbing, and you're like, oh yes. I
still get a dopamine hit when they say coming up to a hover. I used to have a pilot
say
coming up to a hoover, and I always think of him I haven't flown with him for years, and I still think of every time I hear coming up to it, and I hear Ben in my head saying hoover.
It's stuff like that always stands out to you. I flew with a French pilot, and it was he would, as we're like climbing, he would power, rotate. And I was just laugh. So I hear it every time I take off. I love it.
You need to put out podcast swag, and it needs to say, you have a patch that says power.
Oh, that's great. I didn't even think of that. I'm doing it.
Maybe put a croissant on the side of the helicopter.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh,
you know what? I like this idea. Again, a good reason we had to talk.
Yeah. Oh, my cheeks hurt from laughing so much with you. We've laughed so much on this podcast.
It's been fantastic. So I got another question though, because with all your instructor and training and stuff, which is cool because now you take both worlds. You take the instructor world, like, and you elevate your care world when you're actually doing the job. I want to talk about kit and equipment that you carry. So, and the reason I want to talk about this is because I know a lot of people. I'm gonna rephrase that and say, so some of the people that I've flown with, they want to bring a ton of equipment with them, and I get it, and I'm on board. But a lot of times, I try to tell them, like, you need enough to take care of 2 patients, 2. And that's because if you have 2 patients, you have enough to take care of 2 patients. But if you only have 1 patient, then you've got enough to last at least double. So that's what I try to tell people. Now, what do you carry, and what are recommendations for you for gear and equipment, medical specific equipment that you would tell everybody to put on board or that you carry?
So I carry very little in my flight suit. When I first started flying, I mean, every pocket was chock full of crap, flushes and IV start kits and chest darts and, electrodes and all kinds of, I had it all on my flight suit. And it was a duplicate because we carry all of that stuff in our bags. And I pretty quickly realized that overstocking is just as detrimental as understocking, because if I can't get to something that I need because I got to dig through so much other crap that I overstocked, or if every pocket's chock full, we're tearing the soft pouches off the wall, it's not helpful, right? I don't need to carry enough to treat 96 patients in a row. I'm going to restock after every flight. And sometimes on the very off chance on our way back home, on our dead leg home, we might get launched on a second flight. Okay, I carry enough to treat 2 patients. We carry 2 adult vent circuits. That's the maximum that I'm going to need for 2 patients. So yeah, I'm very much a fan of not overstocking. And now most of what I carry is either for safety or my own personal comfort. I carry my Sharpie because that is my writing utensil of choice. I carry a tube of Burt's Beeswax, a pack of gum, because I am like Pavlov's dog, tones drop, gum in, right? I don't know what it is about it, but I carry my gum, my chapstick. I carry a small flashlight in my thigh pocket. Alcohol swabs, because sometimes I do get a little queasy and I'll huff those, or I use them before I push a medication on a patient's IV hub. And I carry a pocket knife, of course, a couple of flushes because I use so many of those on most flights, and then a pencil sharpener. One of my pilots gave me just a little tiny 30-cent metal pencil sharpener, and I was like, Andy, what is this for? I don't carry pencils. He said, you can take a small twig and you can twist it in there and you can make yourself kindling, so you can always start a fire if you need one.
Oh, what a good
that's
idea.
a fantastic idea. For how small that is and for how lightweight, I never even remember that it's in there until I take all my stuff out of my flight suit to wash it. So that's all I carry in my flight suit. I don't carry much at all.
Right on.
Less is more.
Less is more. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Gwenny, this has been amazing. I have one final question because I've had you on for a little while and I appreciate your time. I know you're teaching a class all day, so you're going to be talking all day after we're done with this. But I like to keep this as general as I possibly can. And that is, with everything you've done from the day you started in the ER all the way until now as the lead instructor for Impact EMS, what advice would you pass on to everybody?
My advice would be to always keep learning. I think the most dangerous position we can take is thinking that we have arrived. We have reached the pinnacle of whatever it is. For a lot of EMS providers, whether you're a paramedic or an ER and ICU nurse, becoming a flight nurse or a flight paramedic is the goal. Everybody wants to do that job. That's why they pay us shit, right? Because there's 200 people behind us in line that would gladly take our job for $1 less an hour. Everybody wants to work this job. And I've seen so many people come into this and they say, I can rest on my laurels. I finally got the flight suit. I finally put the Facebook selfie in my helmet, and they think that this is the point of arrival. And what most people don't realize is this is where you're just beginning. There is a huge learning curve when you come to flight because you're now functioning at such a higher level. Even as I was a pretty good ER nurse, I still had a shit ton to learn when I came to HEMS because I knew nothing of aviation. I remember going to my INDOC training and I was like, VFR, IFR, AGL, I don't know what any of these TLAs mean. What are these 3-letter abbreviations? You have to learn aviation. You have to learn safety. I didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground on a scene because the patients always come to me in the ER. I didn't know what to do on a scene. I was like, where do I go? What am I supposed to do here? And so my partners had to teach me those things. And for a paramedic, they don't know what to do in an ICU. And so I teach them that part. I love the nurse medic combination. It's just such a beautiful teamwork of paramedics are taught in an algorithmic fashion and to function quickly. If this, then that. If you see this rhythm, give that medication. If the patient looks like this, you do that for them. It's algorithmic and with the goal in mind for them to independently make decisions quickly and take action right away. Whereas as a nurse, we are taught more holistically. We do these things called care plans, right? Where when we were in nursing school, we would do a whole write-up on every patient that we encountered, their home meds, their history, their allergies, their clinical presentation, their vital signs, their lab work from the last 24 to 48 hours. And we would put that all together and look at the bigger picture. And it takes nurses a lot longer to make a decision than it does a paramedic. Paramedic walks in the room, they know what they're doing right now. A nurse, we gotta think about the nursing care plan, and then we have to run it by the doctor and get some orders, right? But both of those thought processes are required when we're talking about critical care transport medicine. And so the medics cover me where I'm not good in making a fast decision or knowing exactly what to do right away. Whereas I'm going to bring in the critical care is like a wall of cogs, right? If you turn one, you got to know how the little green one, when you turn it, what it's going to do to the big purple one over here. And medics don't think longer term like that until they come to HEMS and they learn how to function like a nurse. The nurse learns how to function like the medic. And so it makes for just a beautiful team dynamic. And I still learn stuff from medics all the time. I was flying with a partner the other day, and he's been a medic for half as long as I've been a nurse, and he's been flying for a tenth of what I've been flying for. And at the end of the flight, I said, hey, what's something I can do different or better next time? I ask that after every flight, whether it's the physician at the bedside where I took the patient to, or I ask my pilot sometimes, and sometimes I ask my partner. And I said, hey, what's something I can do different or better next time? And he chuckled. He said, why are you asking me? You've done this way longer than I have. And I said, yeah, but you have fresh eyes. You and I don't work together very often. You might have noticed something that someone else might not have noticed. So you teach me something. What do you want me to do? And his answer was, please stop carrying the cot by yourself. I feel like a douche when the woman is carrying the cot and I have nothing in my hands. So I said, okay, I'll let you carry the cot. Because the nurse is right in the back. He's in the front with the pilot. So when we hop out on a scene, I don't like to wait for him to come all the way around. I can grab the cot and head toward the ambulance myself. He said, please stop doing that. It's so embarrassing. Okay, I'll lay down you.
Did you just follow that up with, look, I CrossFit, back off?
He's like so ripped. I think that's why it partially hurt his feelings, because his biceps are like the size of my waist, and he's like, I can totally help you. I'm like, the cot is 30 pounds. I've got it. It's fine. But he wanted us to appear as a stronger team, more cohesive. And he didn't want me showing up with the cot without him. And I was like, that's fine. That's fine. I'm absolutely open. One of the things that I have on my resume, Quinny, is it says in the corner, I'm open to the idea of being wrong. Because if I'm not open to the idea of being wrong, I'm never going to grow. I have to be willing to be wrong. And I was discussing this concept with my best friend. She's a flight paramedic of 25 years. She flies for a very large HEMS company here in the United States. And she said, it's so much more freeing when I'm open to the idea of being wrong. There's so much less pressure. If I have to be right all the time, that's a lot of pressure. That's a big bar to live up to. But if I'm open to the idea of being wrong, yeah, I could be wrong about this. It's so much of a lighter load to carry through life. So I'm open to the idea of being wrong, and I'm absolutely opening to my paramedic partner who has a fraction of the experience of me telling me to do something differently. Okay, sounds good. Let's do it. So always keep learning, be open to the idea of being wrong.
My gosh, Gwenny, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking time to come on and join me, drop some stories and great lessons learned. This is amazing. So, I am going to try to get up and see you, whether it's in Haiti, whether it's Heavy Lies the Helmet lecture, whether it's Kansas City hopefully when the Patriots are in town. Oh, that was perfect timing.
Excuse me, were you about to mention the Kansas City Chiefs and our recent rash of Super Bowl victories?
I was going to, and then, I still have got it. And yeah, so when I show up into Kansas City and we can celebrate Kansas City's win, all right, whatever, go Patriots, okay? Just saying, I'm just saying. And we were friends until right then. Oh, No, on a serious note, I really thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to the day we get to hang out, kick back a beer, and just share so many more stories. I love ER stories. I love air ambulance stories. They're just so fun to me. It's why I do this. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here.
Go.
Now it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real ResQ Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode.
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical Helicasts and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
And
Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, a leading manufacturer of trusted special mission avionics for law enforcement, aerial firefighting, and utility operators. Visit www.aem-corp.com and learn how AEM's digital communication and loudspeaker systems, avionics consoles, radios, and specialty audio products can support your most demanding missions.
Go.
so I have thought, I don't know if I can swing it, but I do want to try to get out to Heavy Liza helmet because
Oh, to crash it, Mike?
I heard you talking
Yeah.
about it in one of the, and you had you guys did an episode. You did one of your talks for the course at on the back deck.
I've
somewhere.
actually, I've spoken at Crash and Learn both years that they've had it. I'm speaking again this year. My
Okay.
topic is called "The Time I Almost Got Arrested on Shift," and it was
Okay.
I came
Noted.
toe to toe with a cop who was really into himself and was borderline harassing my patient. She was a rape victim who had just been, and she'd been stabbed, and she'd just been brought into the ER. And he triggered her. He walked in. He was a real big guy, no self-awareness whatsoever. You know, he was like 6'4". I mean, jacked, hair slicked over, fake tan. I mean, exactly what you're imagining, right? And he comes stomping in. Hey, can you tell me what? And she is like, she's screaming and triggered, and like she's been stabbed in the abdomen. I need to get her to the CT scanner, you know. And I was like, can we talk about this outside the trauma bay? And he was like, get out of my way. And I'm standing in between her and him to try to protect her. And I was like, let's talk about it outside. And I was like trying to be calm and soothing and like hoping he'll like, you know, read the room, my dude. And after the fourth time of him not responding to, can we talk about this outside? I got in his face and I said, get the fuck out of here. We're talking about it in the hallway. And he grabbed his radio and was like, I need a supervisor in here to deal with this nurse. And I was like, I'm getting arrested. And so I was like, I started to panic and I was like, Kim, my charge nurse. And she comes running in. And while she pushes him back and is dealing with him and the other cops come running into the ER, I took my patient and I snuck her down the hallway to the CT. And then I was crying in the CT machine like, oh my gosh, she almost arrested me. So my talk at Crash and Learn this year is called The Time I Almost Got Arrested on Shift. But it's about doing the right thing when sometimes doing the right thing doesn't always follow the letter of the law of the policy.